Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another amazing episode of 52 Authors, 52 Weeks. Today, I am joined by author Nicole Van Valen, whose book is The Joyful Leader, as opposed to the Angry Leader. Discover resilience through joy and manage stress to elevate your leadership and organizational culture. Welcome to the show, Nicole.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Lisa Campbell, for having me. I am so excited to be here and to be with your speakers, with your audience today. This is wonderful.
So, I do want to have you start off by telling us a little bit about your background. But before I do, today is Saturday, January 17th, 2026. Your book just had the official launch. I know that you are uber excited. So, congratulations on that launch. And let's hear about your background.
Yes, so the book has launched. I'm super excited. You are so right. And the book houses everything about my background that I'm going to share with you. My background and my experience is a blend of licensed marriage and family therapy work and executive leadership. And I've spent years studying what actually helps people stay resilient, but stay resilient under pressure. And what I found is um, it's really simple, but it's often ignored that joy isn't just a reward for being resilient, it's the resource that makes it possible for us to be resilient. So, with my background as a marriage and family therapist, I have a background in HR as a senior certified professional. And then the joy aspect comes in because I'm a former NFL cheerleader and NFL dancer for the Miami Heat and also for the Miami Dolphins. And of course, I danced back in college as well at the University of Miami and cheered there as well. So that was my background that helped me realize that joy was my resilience resource. So I am all about this mission of helping everyone figure out what their joy is, how to bring that into their world and in their environment intentionally to help them deliver on their goals.
Oh my gosh, I love that. So, of course, I'm in Chicago, so I am a Chicago Bears fan.
That's
And, I like to say that when my husband and I reconnected in 2008, that was the year that I truly fell in love with football, as
Mhm.
well as, fell in love with him. And it's so weird because everybody knows Chicago Bears Super Bowl 1985, right? So I was
Mhm.
like 12 or 13 at that time. But in 2008, when we reconnected, I literally just started to unpack the game and the players. And I think a lot of people don't understand the resilience that you have to have to play on that level. And
Mhm.
it's not like you're going to be a football player for 30, 40 years, right?
No,
It's a short lived career.
exactly. And a lot of the work around that, and I still gravitate around sports, and a lot of the work that I do in nonprofit is working with sports and helping kids and families around that area as well, because there's so much involved, so much dedication, so much a mental game, a physical game, and it's about having peak performance. So my signature keynote presentation is called Joy Powered Performance, and that's what I built my Ready Set Go framework and model all around that, because it helps us lead with clarity, with energy, and having a purpose, but without burning out is the thing.
Oh my gosh, I love that. So I want to make sure that we get all of these juicy details into your episode. So I think the first thing for me, as a person who is a lifelong learner, I feel like your book literally positions joy as a strategic leadership asset. I think a lot of times leaders get burnt out, right? And when you're burnt out, that definitely impacts your resilience, your performance, and most importantly, organizational culture. My dissertation topic was around organizational culture. And
Okay.
some of the things I studied 15 years ago are still problematic today from a culture perspective.
Mhm.
And I'm hoping that as we have this conversation today, our listening viewing audience buys your book, that we can really just start to unpack how, as a leader, you can pause in a very joyful, smart way, right? That you, as you stated, as you're leading, you're clear about your assignment and your purpose, but also that you achieve success in a joyful manner. Who wants to get to the top and you're burnt out, angry? You're not going to be a great leader.
No, and as a leader, we need to be strategic, right? And how can we be strategic and innovative and get to the next level if you are so shrunken by being burnt out and stress? And then when I introduce this concept of joy, a lot of times leaders feel like it's fluff. I don't have time for that. But it's so exciting, especially at leadership retreats or keynote presentations, when a leader identifies with what their joy is and it ignites them to move forward. Because sometimes when you're not coming from a place of joy, and you're only thinking about happiness, which is fleeting. Happiness is about something great happened to me today, and then after that happens, it subsides, and you go back to the status quo. Where joy is something that is ignited from within. And how do we fuel that on a continuous basis? And so the happiness is tied to external wins, and external wins we can't really control, but the joy that is deeper, that's more sustainable, it's aligned with the things that bring meaning for ourselves personally. And many times we can align that to the organizational culture's goal, like you mentioned before. And when leaders can have access to that joy, and even before they can access it, they have to identify what their joys are. There are many times when I'm helping leaders come up with their joy menu, and they can't think of one thing to put on that list. I was at a leadership retreat where the CFO said, "You know what? I haven't felt joy in the last couple of months." She couldn't think of what it was. And then in that same retreat, I had the CEO of that organization say, "You know what? I used to love drawing. My daughter loves drawing also. I'm going to take her to an art class." So we had these two C suite level leaders, one needing help to discover what that joy is, and another was able to identify it. And that's where we are sometimes in this world, is sometimes we can't even figure out what it is. So the number one question I would ask someone if they're having a hard time figuring out is, what is something that you used to enjoy when you were little? And not for nostalgic, but actually something that puts you in a different headspace where time stands still and you are just in that moment. And it doesn't have to be something huge. Actually, the smaller it is, the better. So for me, it's a cup of hot chai tea. We talked about tea earlier before we got on this call, but if I get 15 minutes to drink tea alone by myself in quiet, that rejuvenates me so that I feel joyful on the inside, and then I'm better for those all around me out in the environment.
Oh my gosh. One of the things that I absolutely love about 52 Authors, 52 Weeks is
Mhm.
that it's really a show that's built around authenticity. And why do I say that? I know on some podcasts, you do like a meeting way before you do the episode, whereas my structure is you fill out a form, you want to be here, we log on 5 minutes, and then we start recording. And why is that important? I want our listening viewing audience to know that we don't have a script. And you said something that I want to co-sign for our listening viewing audience. So you started to talk about something that's earlier in the book about the difference between joy and happiness.
Mhm.
And something that I enjoyed as a child that I had gotten away from was reading.
Mm.
And I realized I had spent a large portion of my adult life working, grinding, anything that was healthcare related, healthcare compliance, healthcare leadership, I was reading it, but I didn't have that joy that I have today. And so what happened was I stopped reading everything healthcare related. I went back to a passion of mine, which is reading. And the more I started reading, 52 authors, 52 weeks was birth, because I said, you know what? A lot of the authors that I read, they're the ones that have the big, large contracts, but I wanted to reach out to authors who are just as powerful and give us all this platform so that we can show the world that, number one, we have joy. And but number two, that as a person, as a leader, they are essential for what I've coined as RPC, resilience, performance, and culture. I got that from your book, RPC, resilience,
Really?
performance, and culture.
I gotta write that down. I love it.
Hey, it's yours, right? But you argue
I
in your
love it.
book that joy is not optional. You must have joy. And once I started reading, once I started this podcast, once I quit my job and focused on entrepreneurship, I positioned myself to experience joy 7 days a week. Now, is my life perfect? Absolutely not. But I wake up with this level of calm, peace, and joy that you can't pay for.
Isn't that interesting that it's free
It's
and
free.
everyone has access to it? We just need to allow ourselves the space and time to access it. And it doesn't have to be like a trip to Cabo, or it doesn't even have to be a whole weekend. Like you can do this in in 60 seconds. Because I walk people through a breathing exercise in my keynote presentations. And when we go through that, people come out of it and they can't believe how rejuvenated they are. And if we allow ourselves even 1 minute to bring joy into our lives, it changes the whole trajectory of things. It changes how we are with ourselves, our relationship with ourselves. It changes our relationships with other people, whether at work or with family. There's so much power in joy. Joy is a must have. It's not a nice to have because it protects our energy. It protects our clarity. It protects our judgment, like our mindset, the way we think about things. And for you to talk about how you birthed this podcast based on your love for books, how amazing is that? And I also want to say to you, Dr. Lisa, I love that you have my book, you read my book, and you brought me on here. Even though we didn't do a pre-interview, you basically did a pre-interview by reading the book because my whole being and my whole self is in that book. That book is basically what I wish I had when I was climbing the corporate ladder and was going through toxic environments, toxic managers, not so nice coworkers, and I didn't really have something to rely on. So it's filled with all these tools that I gathered along the way. It basically came from I should keep it by my desk. I have stacks and stacks of 3x5 index cards with different colors. Whenever I go through something, I'd research how to overcome it. And that's what birthed the joyful leader is, how did I maintain joy while I was going through all these stacks of difficulties and researching the best way to overcome it. And I wanted other people to not go through what I went through and be able to, leap forward and in a non-linear way. To quantum leap, if you want to say that, to get to their joy in a quicker, more calm, more gentle, easy, and simplistic way that's tailored to them, what they enjoy.
Okay, I have to read this quote from your book, chapter 2.
Okay.
Why was the computer stressed after work? because it had a hard drive. And this is in the chapter where you explore how stress impacts leaders and teams.
Yes,
And
yes.
I don't think we really understand the depth of how chronic stress shows up in leaders. And it's not until you're away from it. Like I could be in a meeting, like as an
Mhm.
external consultant, I come into a meeting, I could literally, because I'm not stressed, because I found joy, I literally could just watch someone's whole aura like, oh my gosh, they are about to explode any moment. And one of the things that I try to do is, okay, Lisa, what can you do? Even though you're here for this project, what can you do to help this person kind of start to peel back some of those
Mhm.
layers? Because that's hazardous to their health as well as to the people who they lead.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, this stress could become it's become a part of leadership sometimes if it's not managed, especially if it's not identified. Or if someone says, "You know what? This is just how I am. This is how I do things." And they become one with the stress. Like, they're combined together. So the danger is not just the stress alone, like you mentioned, and what's in the book is about that chronic stress without having any kind of recovery. So the chronic stress is the stress that doesn't go away. It's that stress that could then lead to burnout, and it becomes chronic, a part of us. And when leaders um, are coping with productivity in a harmful way, through overworking. And I used to do it. I used to think, if I am just perfect and I make sure that my team is doing everything perfectly and I'm micromanaging it, or I emotionally shut down. Or the thing you see a lot of times is overworking, working 16 hours is like a badge of honor. That's where the leader becomes that, and that's what the problem is that grind mentality is the problem, because that's all we know, that's all we've learned, that's the only examples we see from leadership. But we need to shift that learning to pause and take a smarter, more proactive way of dealing with stress and burnout. And it's not by pushing harder. So I mentioned before, having that 60-second reset, right? That's, you can name and identify what's causing you the pressure. So even understanding that you're feeling pressure, name what it is, and then breathing deep, taking 3 deep breaths. And what you'll notice is your shoulders may begin to relax, your jaw is not as tight. You'll just notice the stress melting away from your body, and and you can align with what actions you need to take. So when we're feeling that as a leader, feeling stressed and burnt out, many of us think it's a weakness. Like we're weak, we're burnt out, or what it is. But it's not a weakness. And it's in the data stating that it's not a weakness. It's actually a signal, it's a warning sign that we need to do things differently before our body shuts down. I literally had someone I was working with where her body shut down because she was working so hard that she was in the hospital, not one, not two, but 3 different times. So we want to make sure that we don't get to that stage where we need to be hospitalized, to be forced to rest. Like we put rest into our daily lives and take our breaks.
Mm. Okay, Nicole, I have to share with you. I had a friend who last year was working 60 hours a week,
Mm,
had back to back meetings, wasn't stopping to eat. She'd be at the nail shop and she's still working on calls, literally day and night, no break.
mhm,
One day, there's this book that says the body keeps the score. One day, she started exhibiting symptoms like she had early onset dementia. The
wow.
doctor started running all these different tests. She felt like she was losing it. And so the doctor, after all of this workup, came to the conclusion that it was her lack of work life balance that
Mhm.
was putting her in this state. So, guess what she did? She quit.
Mm.
She allowed herself some time to heal, and then she went back into a different environment, still healthcare related, but not as stressful, where she could have that when I'm at work. And even when you're at work, you still need you cannot run on meetings back to back to back
No,
without time to go to the bathroom, without time to have that pause, without time to just sometimes I just need to meditate, right? I just need to
exactly.
look at the wall and just do like this and just allow my body to come down. Listen, Nicole, I want to make sure we don't run out of time, but
Okay,
we've got to talk about two things I really want to talk about.
what's that?
We have to talk about the Ready, Set, Go framework.
Yes.
So, tell us about this three-step model for building resilience through joy.
All right. So, in my history and in my experience of being a therapist, a mental health therapist, I noticed that resilient people did three things. And I also noticed when I did these three things, I felt a lot better, like a more sense of control over how to bring and maintain happiness in my life and move forward. So one is ready. This is where you discover yourself. So you identify what drains you and what restores you. You recognize whatever patterns or triggers or self-talk, negative self-talk that you might be saying to yourself, or what are you avoiding? What are you overdoing, over functioning on? And identifying those things so that you can reconnect with what your values are, what your strengths are, what your good leadership skills are and what it means to you. So, ready is when you are self aware without judging yourself. So, that's the first step. Set is when you design your landscape. So this is where I'm talking about your environment. You get to come into your environment because you're joy filled, and you begin to shape your environment, your resilience. You have boundaries. You know what kind of relationship you want. You understand the culture you're in. You understand the expectations. And then as leaders, we begin to design the support that we need, our mentors who are allies, where we need to have that space to have recovery, like you just mentioned, and having like communication norms that work for you. And with this, you get in a mindset that is no longer toxic. And you can redesign what you have control over. So you identify what you control and what you can't control. So this is set is where your resilience becomes structural. This is where it becomes a strategy within the culture. And then go is when you go and you deliver on your goals. You're taking action. You're aligning your goals with your energy, with your purpose. You're building this momentum. And even through the small consistent moves that you make in your life that works for you. So you're making resilience measurable. This is how you recover. This is how you lead. These are the decisions that you're going to make in your life. So this is about go is about execution, but it's doing it in a way that's sustainable. Overall, Ready, Set, Go turns resilience into a repeatable leadership practice that you could do at any time that works specifically for you because it's all based on your joys. And what's so interesting is I have this sphere of resilience self assessment. It's complimentary to anyone. I'll give you the link. You can share it with your group, but it focuses on 8 different domains. And when people take this within less than 5 minutes, they get their scoring of the areas they do exceptionally well in, where their strengths are, where they're able to help other people. And as leaders, that's what we do. We help others. And then it shows your gaps, the areas that you need additional support. And as leaders, we need all the support we can get because our tasks can be heavy at times, having the weight of the team and the organization on your shoulders. So the Ready, Set, Go model, like I said, it turns resilience into something repeatable, but more importantly, enjoyable so you can sustain this leadership practice.
I was just going to say sustainability. I
Oh,
remember doing a project at a hospital last year, actually 11 hospitals. And one of the things I asked one of the vice presidents We know as the consulting group, we know why we're here, but what's the one thing you want to happen after we leave? And she said, once you guys stand this program up, I need for it to be sustainable because that's when I know that we have won. And
Mm.
I love that because we think about it from the perspective of sustainability, like with the earth and all of that, but that also applies to everything we do.
Mhm.
So before we go, we have to know about joy powered performance. I love a good framework.
I know. Yeah, I love joy powered performance because it highlights everything that I'm about and everything that I want help to help others with. And so that is about the joy, of course, tapping into what fuels you, right? To sustain you, and then the power because joy is so powerful. It fuels you forward. So you're recovering forward and then you get to perform, right? And you're performing at your highest because the joy is fueling you. So this is how leaders sustain their energy, right? And they get to focus on what is real under that pressure. And it's renewable, this joy. It's an internal source. It's not something outside of us, it's internal. So you have a sense of control with it. So you have agency. You're able to connect with others with meaning. You get to play and have fun. And you have gratitude for others because you're coming from a place of positivity. And then there's movement with it. And you become more creative and you're coming from a place of service. You're not coming from a place of lack. And when leaders model this type of recovery, they get to give their teams permission to be human and
Mm,
and to perform and have improvements. So it's not fear based because when you're fear based, you kind of shrink and become small. When you're joy based, you grow, you expand as an individual, your team expands, and you're modeling the way. And then the department expands, and then the organization overall expands, and it becomes this whole resilient movement and that gets to impact the community at large and at a higher scale. So I've seen leaders shift from this constant urgency to this place of clarity just by designing these recovery moments between meetings. So this is when leaders stop treating rest, like I said before, as a reward, but it is a strategy. You're taking that 5, 10, 15-minute break between meetings. You're taking your actual lunch. You're going on PTO and not signing in because you know your team is wondering why you're clocking in. And they want you to come back rejuvenated. So when they go on PTO, they know inside that it is okay because my leader really takes their PTO. So I can truly be away and get rejuvenated and come back really strong to support the team and the organization. So it's a strategy and it stabilizes leaders' teams when they see this. Recovery is not the opposite of performance. Recovery is part of the performance. It's what fuels us through joy.
wow. I want to tell you something funny. So I was working with this leader and her team, and she went on vacation and she came back, and everybody knows that she was working while she was on vacation.
Mhm.
And so she came back and we had a conversation and she said, just put it to me straight. I said, okay. I'm glad you asked me to be straight with no chaser. I said, when you left from vacation, your team felt like you were wound up too tight.
Ooh.
I said, when you came back from vacation, you were still wound up too tight, which means you really did not have the time to release and reset. I said, you can't lead from, and this is from your book, you can't lead from a place of crisis. You have to lead from clarity.
Mhm.
It's so important. Nicole,
Yes.
we are out of time, but it's two things I want to do. Number one, please tell our listening viewing audience where they can find you, where they can get a copy of the book, and then leave us with one lesson you want our listening viewing audience to walk away with.
Okay, so you can contact me at Nicole at keeninsights.com. So Nicole at KEANEINSIGHTS.com. Email me if you have any questions. I would love to hear from you. Any thoughts about this podcast? It would be awesome. You can learn more at keeninsights.com. If you go to keeninsights.com/book, you can find information about the joyful leader there. And so all of that information is there. And what I would like to leave you with is that resilience is not about pushing harder. It is about pausing smarter so that you can lead with clarity rather than crisis. So I want you to know joy is not optional, it is your resource to help you stay steady, stay human, especially in the age of AI, and to help you stay effective.
And joy, being joyful is your right. You deserve to be joyful. It's
Yeah.
not like, I wish I could be joyful. You can be joyful if you're willing to do the work.
Yes, and it's maintenance and it's preventative when you do it, because when you're in the thick of things you could feel like, oh my gosh, I can't get to this place of joy, but it's really a mindset. So anything you can do to disrupt it. So that's why I say do the 60-minute 60-second breathing exercise. It disrupts that thought pattern. Go outside, take a walk. That disrupts the thought pattern. Call someone that's positive in your life. That disrupt. I go out and smell the rose, literally in my backyard, smell the roses. So figure out what you want to put on your joy menu. So when you're feeling stressed or burnt out, you don't have to think. You just look at your menu and go do one of those things.
So it's really about having the tools ahead of time. So when you get to that place, you pull that tool right off your tool belt and execute.
Exactly.
I love it. Nicole, I have enjoyed chatting with you today about the joyful leader, discover resilience through joy, and manage stress to elevate your leadership and organizational culture. I wish you the best of luck, continued luck with your book launch. I know that it has been an amazing experience. I can just tell from your energy and the passion that you put into the book that you are not just writing about joy, you're living a joyful life.
Yes, yes. And I want everyone to live that joyful life. So reach out to me if there's anything I can do to help you cross over to the joy side, because on a consistent basis, because it is beautiful within that sphere of joy.
I love it. I love it. Well, listen, everyone, this has been another amazing episode of 52 Authors, 52 Weeks. Until next week, everybody have a great day.